But I think the major kind of prism with which Britain views South Caucasus is through Russia. Wants to limit the influence of Russia. Britain, I think, has been one of the strongest supporters, if not the strongest supporter in the West, of Ukraine. Wants to halt Russian aggression in Ukraine. So, in that sense, Britain will assist any country in South Caucasus which also wants to reduce its Russian influence. I would say that we're seeing, and this is not a good phenomenon, South Caucasus in a way joining the Middle East in the last few years. And so this is obviously what the closure of the Lachin corridor and the new checkpoint are designed to squeeze, to put pressure on the Armenians of Karabakh, and I think this is a very serious situation, and is likely to lead to new conflict. Maybe not on the scale that we saw in 2020, but on a smaller scale. Yeah, I'm sitting in London in Great Britain, and I have to say that on a governmental level, unfortunately, South Caucasus does not rank very high in the priorities of British foreign policy. We have quite a strong non-governmental presence in the UK with several NGOs working on South Caucasus, probably the best ones. Some good experts, but on the governmental level, South Caucasus isn't a priority, and this was, I think, always the case, but has got worse since Brexit, when it is the European Union, which is now, in Georgia, is the major player because of Georgia's hopes of joining the EU, and European Union also playing a leading role in peace negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Britain, unfortunately, does not have the same kind of profile and influence. It has relations with all three countries, especially strong, I guess, with Georgia, a traditional energy relationship with Azerbaijan because of BP's presence in Azerbaijan, but that's no longer so important as it was, and quite a modest relationship, it has to be said, with Armenia. So what are the priorities for the UK? Well, obviously, like most Western countries, wants to see regional stability, but I think the major kind of prism with which Britain views South Caucasus is through Russia. Wants to limit the influence of Russia. Britain, I think, has been one of the strongest supporters, if not the strongest supporter in the West, of Ukraine. Wants to halt Russian aggression in Ukraine. So, in that sense, Britain will assist any country in South Caucasus which also wants to reduce its Russian influence, and that, of course, also includes Armenia. If Armenia makes a more stronger move away from Russia, then I guess Britain will be supportive. I guess that there's a perception both of threat and of opportunity. The threat, I guess, is obviously clearest to Georgia, and the opportunity, yes, that if the trend continues and Russian influence weakens in the South Caucasus, this will be seen as an opportunity for greater engagement, for more trade, and so on. Yes. Yeah, I would say that for sure, the last few years have seen the weakening of international role of international organizations in South Caucasus, particularly OSCE, United Nations, and the increase in influence of regional powers. Russia in 2020, in the Second Karabakh conflict, but also Turkey. Iran wants to play a stronger role, but I think is a bit limited by many factors. So yes, for sure, there is a new configuration in the South Caucasus. European Union I think it is an increasingly geopolitical actor. It was more of an economic actor before, but is increasingly a geopolitical actor in South Caucasus. And so we are seeing these new configurations with and I guess the fear used to be that South Caucasus would be Armenia, Azerbaijan, for example, would be a kind of proxy conflict between Russia and the West. That hasn't really happened so much. Russia and the West are both competing, but as negotiators, it's not. It's a fairly benign competition in that respect. But we are seeing this kind of proxy conflict spreading more to the Middle Eastern countries. So Israel, stronger relationship with Azerbaijan, Iran, worried about the situation, more supportive of Armenia, even India, Pakistan, spreading to the South Caucasus, India supporting Armenia, and Pakistan, Azerbaijan. So yeah, we are. I would say that we're seeing, and this is not a good phenomenon. South Caucasus, in a way, joining the Middle East in the last few years. Well, for those of us who study and watch South Caucasus, it's quite frustrating that we see these three small countries geographically close together, a lot of prospects for economic cooperation in the future, and transport links, and so on. And yet it never happens. Even the famous ninth point of the November 2020 ceasefire agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which said all transport routes will be unblocked, is still unfulfilled 2.5 years later. So that's quite frustrating. And so I don't see, unfortunately, any prospects of a big kind of cooperation regime or system in South Caucasus. And partly that's the conflicts, Armenia, Azerbaijan in particular. Partly it's the geopolitics, the proxy conflicts. And partly it's because I think the local economic players, they get their so much income, so many rents from for them, closed borders and roadblocks and customs are a plus. It means that they can earn more money. They're not interested in transparency of borders or free economic cooperation, because then your big oligarchs in places like Azerbaijan will lose money rather than earn money, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, obviously the war in Ukraine, this kind of Russia's invasion of a sovereign country, means that levels of trust in Russia are extremely low in all three countries, including in Armenia, which is, as we know, is formally an ally to Russia, but feels that Russia is not fulfilling its obligations as an ally. So that is an extra complication, because Russia is the guarantor of the November 2020 agreement, which says that transport links will be unblocked. But then it also says that the road to Nakhchivan through Armenia will be guarded by the Russian FSB, and that's, I think, problematic for almost everyone who is not Russian. That an international transport link would be guarded by FSB. So I think, and then we have economic sanctions on Russia. So and here I think there's a lot of Western concern that all three Caucasus countries are quite weak on sanctions, and that therefore they are kind of holes in the sanctions regime which Russia can use. For all those reasons, it's harder to build a kind of economic cooperation regime in South Caucasus. Azerbaijan is using what someone described as coercive diplomacy. It's using both force and diplomacy to try and get it what it wants. It has a very maximalist position of basically, as we can see, forcing the Armenians of Karabakh to accept the Azerbaijani flag without really any offers of rights or autonomy to them. And so this is obviously what the closure of the Lachin corridor and the new checkpoint are designed to squeeze, to put pressure on the Armenians of Karabakh, and I think this is a very serious situation, and is likely to lead to new conflict. Maybe not on the scale that we saw in 2020, but on a smaller scale for sure. I can't see this continuing without some kind of violence, unfortunately. What can stop this? Well, we saw the International Court of Justice ruling in February, which many hoped would stop this, but clearly that's just a court ruling. It doesn't have any force on the ground. So, international organizations can try, but clearly, I think Russia is obviously the first actor that can stop this. But then Russia, for 4 months, has done almost nothing, and sort of was a kind of witness, a bystander, as the new checkpoint was set up. We're seeing at the moment a quite serious level of talks in Washington, with Secretary of State Blinken personally involved. So the United States, I think, is putting its influence and time and energy back into this, which is positive. But again, what kind of enforcement capacity does the United States have? Similarly with the European Union, where Charles Michel spent a lot of time and effort last year on this process. So I guess this will stop when Azerbaijan feels that it wants to have less coercion and more diplomacy, and when it feels that it's the price of using force is too high. But that moment has not arrived, unfortunately. It's often not very helpful to compare all these conflicts. They're all so different. We like to quote Tolstoy, which says, all happy families are alike, all unhappy families are different in their own way, and the same, I think, is all these conflicts are different in their own way. I think clearly what we're seeing at the moment is Azerbaijan using the opportunity to be extremely aggressive towards Armenia, with operations across the border, closure of the Lachin corridor, and so on. So the aggressive behavior is coming from Azerbaijan. But I wouldn't say that puts Azerbaijan in the role of Russia and Ukraine. I think both sides in the last 30 years, Armenia and Azerbaijan, have been aggressive. So I would put them in different categories. I certainly, I'm certainly very clear that I want Azerbaijan aggression on the corridor and on the Armenian border to stop. But I think it's not on the same level as Russia's behavior in Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine, invaded a sovereign state, captured hundreds of towns and villages. Tens of thousands of people have died. It's a different order of problem. It's a major European war, and I guess the Armenia-Azerbaijan war conflict is serious, but it's not on the same level.